He's live. It's a good turnout. Nice cross section too. I know. It's frightening actually.
Good evening. Good evening. Going to allow some folks to grab their seats. My name is Robert Alexander, and I'm the director of the Institute for Civics and Public Policy here at Ohio Northern University. And I am delighted to see such an electric crowd here tonight on a wonderful Wednesday night here in the village of Ada. Events like tonight are fundamental to the Republic, which of course is a representative democracy. We're fortunate to live in a society where self-government is the rule, and it is through civil debate and discourse that we're able to function as a republic. I want to thank the candidates for agreeing to not only participate in this event, but for putting themselves in the arena in the first place. In 1910, Teddy Roosevelt gave his famous Citizenship in a Republic speech. And in this speech, he talked about the importance of those who put themselves in the arena. I would also like to thank, many of you probably saw these students out there before, our ICAP fellows and ICAP ambassadors. Maybe they can put their hands up. I'd like to thank those students for all of the work that they put into this event. I would like to thank Nancy Stewart. Where's Nancy at? Nancy, of course, is hiding back there for all the work that she did to put this together. And I'm especially excited that we were able to partner with a member of our community, the Ada Lions Club. Where are all my Lions at? All right, way to go. Their work, along with the generosity of Buckeye East, provided the lovely refreshments. So please give them a round of applause for that. Jessica had indicated to me on behalf of the Lions Club, we would like to thank everyone for their time and support in tonight's event. And of course, they look forward to seeing them at future events, and of course, to seeing everyone's vote on November 7th. Now on to the logistics. So each candidate will have 2 minutes to provide an opening statement. From there, I will draw from a list of questions that we have developed where the candidates will have 2 minutes to answer. At the conclusion of the forum, each candidate will have 2 minutes to provide a closing statement for the audience. There are note cards that can be circulated throughout, so we've got our note card people here. For questions that you might like to pose, please write them down and you can hand them to our ushers at any point. And if time allows, I will select some of those questions for the candidates. So without further ado, and our timekeeper over here is Allison Ringheiser, and she will alert the candidates to let them know when they have about 30 seconds left and when their 2 minutes are up. So without further ado, let us hear from the candidates. So to introduce themselves first, we will give 2 minutes to Dave Retterer and then 2 minutes to Howard Finn.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you all for being here. This is an interesting thing to go through. My wife is back there doing this. This is an interesting thing to go through, and I'm glad that Howard and I get to do this together. We've been friends for a long time. I taught at Northern for 40-some years. I've been the mayor now for 20 years, and about 20 years ago, after I was elected the first time, but before I took office, most of you know Dr. Larry Hubble, the chiropractor. He came up to me, and he had been the mayor before, maybe 10 years before me, and he just looked at me right in the face and he said, "Don't you let this change you," which is really perfect because I'm really not good at being someone else. And I mean, there's a positive and a negative to that because I guess nobody's a perfect guy, and I'm not even close. But I get to do this job and just be myself, and that's what I like about doing this. Thank you.
Well, I'm Howard Fenton, and I'm running for mayor. And my wife and I have lived in Ada for over 20 years. We have a really, really nice big old farmhouse on Gilbert Street. And the thing we like best about it is sitting on our front porch when weather permits and being able to talk to all of our friends and neighbors as they walk by. And that to me is what Ada is about. It's a great place to work, great place to live. And I think one of the things I want to be talking about is that there are people who work in Ada who like to live here and really can't find a suitable place to live. And I think that's one of the issues that I want to address. I'm a lawyer, retired law professor and administrator from the university. While I was there, I wrote about $7 million worth of grants that I administered. I was, I'm losing my train of thought here. I was interested in village governance. I served on the Ada Planning Commission for 2 terms and learned a lot about the process there, and decided that I wanted to run for mayor because, as Dave said, we've been friends a long time, but I think in terms of leadership and vision for the village, 20 years probably is long enough, and I'd like to take a look at the way the village moves forward, talking about doing planning, doing positive, proactive planning, and addressing some of the issues that I think we have to address to have a vibrant, positive future for the village. So I'm looking forward to the questions and being able to elaborate on some of the things that I care about. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear okay? A little bit louder, okay? All right. Okay. Thank you for that. So let's have the first question go to Howard. Can you discuss what agendas prompted you to run for election or for election?
Yeah, as I touched on it in my opening statements, I think that at some point after 20 years, the village can benefit from new vision, some new ideas, some thoughtful approaches to issues that, that we're dealing with. I think, for instance, that a proactive planning process with community engagement would be really beneficial, because I think one of the things the village needs to look at is what it wants to be 5, 10, 20 years from now, and how we want to address things like the lack of adequate family housing for people who want to live here, how we want to address managing our community relations, how we want to work with those around us and engage with those who we have to engage with during the governing process. So I think that I have a different background, certainly, than Dave has after his 20 years as mayor, but I think I have an effective background, one involving administration as well as working on grants, and I think that it's important that the village address some of the things that it needs to address to assure continued economic development and growth in a measured and attractive way.
Dave?
Thank you.
Same question. So can you discuss the agendas that have prompted you to run for re-election?
Yeah, they're the same as I've always had. I mean, we have a planning commission. We have a tree commission. I'm wearing my tree commission shirt. We have unbelievable, I'll talk about this later if he asks the question that he mentioned before, but we have a remarkable collection of people who assist us in, for example, things such as the current Grandview project that's going on now. And they just put the concrete down today, most of it, and it's coming around the corner to being done here in the next while. But we have people from the county, we have people from the state, we have people from even the federal government from time to time. We had one of our representatives came here and rode around through Ada. We gave him a tour of Ada because we wanted to let him see what, or he came to see what it was that the village had done with the federal monies that we'd received. And that's not me. Most of what happens here isn't me. Most of it's Jim Meyer, Jamie Hall, Patty Navin, and all of these unbelievable, brilliant, energetic people that we have working for the village that make this happen. And I really look at myself as, I go into the office every day, I see everybody that's there. I'll see Jamie, I'll see Patty, we got Michelle downstairs, we got Michelle upstairs, we've got Eileen. I see all of these people. I talk to the chief of police, and I get a sense for what's going on in the village. And I do this almost every weekday. And when something happens, I get a phone call, especially if it's something happens from the chief, I get a phone call. So my agenda is to keep being me, and that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Dave, we'll start you out with this question. Being mayor often requires you to be the face of the village. Can you discuss your role in being a public relations official for Ada?
Thank you. A lot of people think I'm pretty good at that, and there's no place that I don't go in town that I just like being around people. But then when we go out with our friends back there a lot. We put many, many miles on vehicles, and we've been all over the eastern half of the United States together pretty much. And we'll go in and sit down at a restaurant or a bar or something and sit there, and there'll be, just to give you an example, we went to this, what was that, West Virginia, I think? Anyway, we went into this bar, and there was a kind of a bar shaped like this. And I went up there and said something to the bartender and asked if we could move some chairs around. And he said, well, yeah. And then the guy that was sitting there said, you're not from here, are you? But then because they don't ask, all right, they just do. So I went and went up and talked to them. There were 12 people at the bar, and 3 of them had an Ada connection. One went to law school here, one went to business school here, and then left, or education, and left and came back and went to law school. Another one had a brother that came here, and another one had been here to visit a friend of his, and they had nothing but good things to say about Ada. I think that's part of my job, is to be a cheerleader for the village wherever I go, and that's kind of what I do.
Thank you. So, Howard, can you discuss your role in being a public relations official for the village of Ada?
Yeah, thanks, Rob. As Dave indicated, the mayor is the face and the voice of the village. If there's any question about that, we have a great council with a lot of articulate and strongly opinionated people. But members of council don't really represent the village when it comes to public relations as much as the mayor. So I think as mayor, I think it would be important to engage with all of the organizations in the village, to be available to people, to be available to attend functions, official and unofficial, for example, at the university, to talk to the various civic organizations, to be the person who people come to talk about the village. I think, for example, opportunities to perform weddings, to engage with groups, to talk to various organizations that want to talk to the mayor, to have office hours where people can just come in and talk, and to engage the community in sort of the planning process, the budgeting process, to get people to talk to those in the village and to the mayor. I think that's an important role. It's one that I believe is probably as important as almost any other, and that's to create an impression among the people in the village that the mayor is engaged, that the mayor is interested in what they're doing, what's happening, and to just be sort of the voice and face of the village in all respects.
Thank you. So we'll start with Howard with this question. What are your approaches to economic development for Ada?
Economic development is important, but I think it's important in the sense of how we go about it in a planned way. And it goes back to the point I was making earlier about planning and talking about what the vision should be for the village in terms of what kind of economic development, what businesses are we looking for. Now, the people who talk about job growth will tell you that the engine for most job growth is local business. The Wilson plant's a perfect example. They're talking about hiring 20 or 30 new people. That's a business that was here that's going to grow. But economic development is necessarily restricted where you have a community where there's really no place for employees, et cetera, to live. If you're a company wanting to locate here where you're going to bring in 40 new people with managers, and you look around, you talk to folks in Ada, and they say, where are my employees going to live? Where are my managers going to live? Well, we can't say Arlington or Bluffton or Kenton. We need to talk about where in Ada. And right now, that's a problem. I've heard this from a lot of people, that professionals, people with young families who would love to live in Ada because it's a great place to live, can't find suitable housing. So I think economic development necessarily is going to be restricted by the fact that there's no place for people coming in to live. So I think that's something that has to be addressed and is a key part of the planned economic development growth.
Thank you, Howard. Dave?
Thank you. With regard to the housing business in Ada, as far as I can tell from reading the ORC and from talking with our village attorney, we can't be building houses, but we can do a whole boatload of other things than we have. For example, you take the street I live on, and that was done, what, 30 years ago, or 25 or 30, and that street was built by the village. The sewers and the water were put in by the village. Gas was put in by the gas station. And the village did those things with the contractor. And then when it was done, we dedicated the streets, and now we maintain them. I mean, he paid to do them, but now we maintain them, and we participated in the infrastructure. That's our job, is infrastructure. And to encourage people to come here to build homes, we do need to have a place to build them. We do need to have an understanding of what we're going to build, or what will need to be built. But it's not part of the village's job. It's not part of even our authority, I don't believe. And I've got essentially got the agreeal of our village attorney to do that. We've participated in many, many ways with industry. We've done tax abatements on industry. We've got the Wilson plant there, and we've got ATI has had at least 3 abatements, and abatements are good. They help attract businesses. We've got Ada Plastics, and they've had a couple of abatements on the new things that they build. And in fact, one place has since pretty much gone under and is for sale, but the abatement was for 75% of the tax that would be due. And okay.
You can finish your.
And in any case, we voted on the board that listens to that. We voted to not reduce their abatement to 0 because the abatement was primarily to get the building there, and the building is still there.
Next question is going to be for Dave, and you actually touched it in your last answer. City infrastructure is a key piece of local politics. I think our ONU students found that out today. For those that don't know, they were struggling with water today. So what are your thoughts on Ada's roads, sidewalks, streetscape, water, sewer, and assessments then to pay for such projects?
This is one thing that I know to be a fact, and that is that if you don't maintain it and don't continue to improve it, it will go away. And we've done a good job for way longer than I've been involved. Jim Meyer was fantastic. He had $10 or $15 million worth of grants and low-interest loans. Jamie has done a wonderful job. Right now we have Christopher Circle going in with new water, new sewer, new storm. Is that correct, Jamie? Grandview. Yeah, my bad. And it's only the next street over from me. But all of that stuff is going in, and that's what it takes to make this work. We maintain our streets as best we can. It's very expensive to do. Some people complain when we do it because they don't think we ought to be spending that money. But we've also had the opportunity from time to time where we would be looking at doing work, for example, on Lincoln, West Lincoln. We were looking at doing work there, and the fellow from Mark Dahl from Kenton came and walked the street with Jim, or with you, was that with you, Jamie? With Jamie, and decided, you know, maybe you want to put this off for one more year. You'll get more points because we're competing with other places, and you have a better chance of getting a grant if you just let it go for one more year. Those are things that most people wouldn't think of. I wouldn't have thought of it. And Jamie has done a fantastic job, and Jim Marr did too. And Patty Navin does a fantastic job with the financing of all these things, and also with doing investments so that we can afford to do some of them. That's all I got.
Thank you. Howard, your thoughts on city infrastructure?
Yeah, I think one of the most common complaints from people in the village, frankly, is about the sidewalks, the unevenness of the sidewalks. I know people that go by our house when they're pushing a baby carriage or when their kids are riding out little bikes. There's a couple bumps they hit. You know, and I'm always thinking, oh, I hope they don't tip over here. But, you know, that's one of the sort of most common concerns that people raise. And I've been going to council meetings regularly since the first of the year, and I have to say that I think the council and Jamie have done a pretty good job in trying to address the sidewalk problem, which is, you know, fairly significant. I know that they had a company that was showing how to cut the uneven parts off of sidewalks. They did it at Paul Logston's sidewalks, and worked out pretty well. That is a problem that has to be addressed. Now, currently, the owners of the property are responsible for repairing the sidewalks, unless there's a tree involved, and that can be quite expensive. But again, that's something that should be looked at, should be addressed. Infrastructure, streets. I think that you know, since I've been here, the work that I've seen is Lima Avenue, West Lincoln. I think the work on Grandview now, it's the concrete streets and Christopher Circle. I mean, that's been significant, you know, and I think that's made a big difference. What I don't like, every time I drive into town from the north or the south, there are no curbs or sidewalks or exposed curbs, decent curbs coming into town. The way Ada greets you when you come in is not particularly impressive. It doesn't look like you're coming into a town until you get across north or past Community Market. So I think that's an area of infrastructure that makes a difference that could be addressed.
Thank you. So the next question for Howard. We are on the campus of ONU. This presents great opportunities and perhaps some challenges for a small town like Ada. Can you offer your thoughts on town-gown relations between Ada and ONU?
Yes, I don't think there's any relationship between the village and the university more important than the town and gown. I think that the village is fortunate to have a university like Ohio Northern, and I think that Ohio Northern is fortunate to be in a village where people are interested and enjoy the features that the university has to offer. I have to come back to the housing issue again, because lately people who come to work at Ohio Northern University are having a hard time finding a place to live in Ada. And when the university faculty, staff, whatever, don't live in Ada, when their kids don't go to the Ada schools, when they don't go to Ada churches or join Ada civic clubs, it starts to erode the relationship between the university and the community, because the people who work at the university don't feel invested in the community. I know many of us have lived here a long time, many of us send our kids to the Ada schools, and that's an important bond, that's an important feature. And if we lose that, because we don't have places for them to live, it's going to erode the relationship. I think engaging with the university, spending time, you know, at university events when asked, I think that's an important part of the relationship. And I would hate to see the town and gown relationship sort of erode. I think it's unfortunate that this year there's not going to be a town and gown banquet, but I think that's something that we need to continue to embrace, and the relationship, and continue to try to strengthen and deepen it, and hopefully by getting people to be able to live in Ada and to be part of the community as well as part of the university community.
Dave?
Well, if you want to think about what the university has done for this village, you can look around this room, or you can walk up and down Main Street, or you can do whatever. And if diversity is really an important thing, which I think it is, we're one of the most diverse small towns probably in America. We've got 3,500 people here, plus that many more students. We're pretty close to that. And we've got people from everywhere. I met Mark Twain over at the Ada Park one time. There was a Mark Twain impersonator. And I went up to him and I said, Mr. Twain, could I ask you a question? And he said, well, yeah. But he was in character. I mean, he didn't say it that way. That's like I thought he would say it. And he said it however Mark Twain would have said it. He said, what do you got? So I said, is it true that one time you said that travel is the enemy of prejudice? And he said, absolutely. And then he went on to describe to me what that's about. Well, we are in the good fortune of being able to travel. Any of us can travel wherever we want. But in fact, we can stay home and still gain benefit from other people who are traveling to come here. We've got people on this campus from, I don't know how many different countries, how many different ethnicities, how many different religions. We've got all of that. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful way for this town to get a flavor for what the real world is about. And our students come here. A lot of them come from different backgrounds, and I think that that's one of the best things. The other piece is that since I've been a mayor, the president of the university when I first got to be mayor was Dr. Freed. And I spoke with him at church one day and said something to him about how I would like to sit down and chat with him about essentially the town and gown relationship. Oh, my bad.
Go ahead, finish your sentence.
I spoke with all three of the others as well, with Baker, DiBiasio, and now with Bauman. And I think that's an important thing to keep those lines of communication open.
I don't know, my wife is back here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to, I need to have these rules in life. This is great to be able to tell people to talk, not talk. Okay, all right.
You do.
Anyway, governments never operate in a vacuum. This one is for Dave to begin. Governments don't operate in a vacuum. How would you see your relationship with other elected officials? We're thinking maybe village council, the county, various boards, and even the state.
I don't know of any of the counselors that absolutely hate me. I hope that's the case. And in meetings, we seem to get along pretty well. I mean, Sheila's here somewhere, and we get along. Bob's here. Is Bob here? Yeah, right there. And we all get along pretty well. And we get along to the extent that it makes it possible for us to have meaningful meetings. That's a big deal. We also get along with, we've got a commissioner right here, lives in Ada, two commissioners, Hardin County commissioners that live here. Well, one of them lives in Ada. And you're still commissioner, aren't you? Tim? Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're a commissioner, yeah. And so that's important. I mean, that we can have communication. I see Fred at coffee every once in a while when he's allowed to go. And we talk about some things like about the community and so forth. And then we've got John Cross, who lived in Ada for a while, and now he's living in Findlay. And he keeps in touch with us. And we had Jim Jordan in Ada here about 3 weeks ago to come, and he made a run through the campus, run through Wilson, run through the village. We had a nice meeting there. And that was useful. It was valuable. And we also have other members of various governments that have dealt with this, the House of Representatives for the state. What do you call that, Howard?
General Assembly?
General Assembly for the state. We've had people from there come. So I think we're doing pretty well with that. And they've got the beat on Ada, a large part because of people like Jamie and Patty and Jim Meyer and all these folks that have been helping the village do things by using grants and funding from the state and federal government, and even the county now.
Howard?
Someone's crackling on the microphone there. Yeah, relations with the with government officials and other bodies is really critical, as Dave says. The village council will not change. That's a certain thing. We have 2 vacancies, 2 incumbents running, and no opposition. So the 6 members of council in January will be the same 6 that are there now. And I know all of them. I think I'd be fine in getting along with all of them. I've observed the council meetings, as I've said, for some time. I worked with government, other government officials around here. I know that the county officials, when I was at the university and was running our international program, we worked with the state courts. We worked with the General Assembly members there. We had interns with Bob Cupp, both when he was speaker and when he was a senator. And I know the people, I know how this works. And it's in a bipartisan way. The International Master's Program that I started at Ohio Northern was a direct result of an earmark that Mike DeWine got for us when he was in the Senate. George Voinovich and Sherrod Brown helped us get the money to continue it. You know, we've worked with a lot of government officials, and I have every confidence that I would be able to do that effectively over the course of my 4 years as mayor if I'm elected.
Thank you. I want to remind our audience that if you have a question, make sure that you write it down, and you can find an usher. Does anybody have questions? Are there any questions out there? Okay, wow. They're taking it easy on you guys today. I have extras, okay, so we're good. So this one is for Howard. What are your thoughts about the role of citizen input and what it is currently and what it should be for the village?
I think that is just a critically important question. I think citizen engagement, citizen input in governance in the village is really is a powerful thing that helps people learn about the government and support the government. I have to say we went through a citizen engagement process with the Community Development Block Grant that recently was awarded to the village, and I sat through many of those meetings. We had I wouldn't say a great turnout. We had a pretty good turnout, especially initially among citizens. And I think that that's a model or a pattern that we really ought to continue to use. I talked about planning, and I think that we need to begin a planning process that's more proactive and diverse and inclusive than we've done in the past. And I think citizen engagement in that process is an absolutely critical component. Many years ago when I was a law student, I was actively involved in a community planning process in Austin, Texas, and saw firsthand what that involved, and actually ended up writing an article about it. But community planning is important because you need to get the citizens to engage. I've been kind of, you know, I think in Ada, if there's a hot button issue, people are going to turn out. Concrete streets, Christopher Circle, as Bob knows, that was a hot button issue and people turned out to go to council. Unless there's something like that, and I don't think the recent discussion about cats is going to generate that much activity, but you know, we need to expand the interest among the community so people turn out for not just the things that really excite them, but also for the things that are important for the future of the village that they may not appreciate.
All right, this one's for Dave. So what skills do you have for public budgeting that you would bring to this office?
I have one really very valuable skill. and that is that when I don't know how to do something, I ask someone that does. And I'm not really your man at Is that better? Okay, I'm going to start over. I have one really good thing that I know how to do, and that is to say when I don't know how to do something. And I'm not your man for being the main budget person. I do participate in the budgeting process every year since I've been in this seat. But I know that when it gets deep, I'm going to go see Patty Navin, which I did today. And I'm going to talk to Jane Napier if it has something to do with a legal question regarding that. And I've got a reasonably good mind. I can understand things and I can read, but you don't want me to be in charge of the budget. Now, if you go look at there's three forms, more than that, but there's three major forms of government. But we're one of those, and we're the weak mayor council form of government. And people think that means I got nothing to do, but that's not what it does. It still allows me to participate in the budgeting process, but it's not my job to create the budget. If in a strong mayor government, it would be my job to work with the fiscal officer and come up with the budget that I want. That's not the kind of government we have here. I think what we have to do is just make sure that we communicate with people and continue doing what we're doing, I think. I'm pleased with that.
Thank you. Howard?
I'm sitting here with a mathematician who doesn't want to do numbers, and I'm a lawyer, and boy.
If I may, accounting and mathematics are two completely different things.
The way I see the budgeting process and the role of the mayor in it is one of helping identify and shape priorities. And I also think this is an opportunity in the budgeting process where citizen engagement would be important and helpful. But I think that involves sitting down and say, okay, what are our priorities within this budget? What discretionary money do we have? Where can we best use it? What would be the most important place to put it? I think that's important. Notwithstanding being a lawyer, I wrote and administered over $7 million worth of grants for the university when I was there, and I had to develop the budget and then manage it. So I understand the budgeting process, although obviously not the kind of detail that we see in the village. And I also know from being at those council meetings and having conversations with them, I know that Patty Navin and Jamie Hall are just first rate, and I think that's a real asset. But I'm perfectly comfortable to be working within the budget and looking at the priorities from the distance that Dave's talking about. And I would say something about this weak mayor system. I think that's somewhat of a misnomer. But if you look at what the law provides, the mayor is still the chief executive officer of the village. The administrative officers of the village report to the mayor. And the mayor has what I think, hearkening back to Teddy Roosevelt, a bully pulpit. I think the mayor can make suggestions, can offer ideas, can identify issues, and I think that is an important role of the mayor that may not be as weak as the term implies.
This goes back to a question we addressed earlier, but I think you can provide more detail. We'll start with Howard on this one. What ideas do you have to maintain and improve communication about important decisions that are made between elected officials and the community?
Well, I want to say that in the last, year or so, the webpage for the Village of Ada has gotten to be quite good, which is a vehicle for communicating with the community. I think that to have a resource, because we're also used to clicking on something, to have a resource that, like the webpage as it is now, is an important vehicle for communication. I think that being available at particular times on a regular basis and just being available within the community to talk to voters and constituents is important. But I do think that having organized processes for bringing people into the decision-making, either be it in the planning process, in the budgeting process. I think to get citizen engagement is important. And the way you encourage that is working with civic clubs, for example, working with young people, working with the ICAP students. And I know we have this Civic Engagement Day at the beginning of the year. But working with organizations to help people understand, one, there's an opportunity to engage, and there's a value and importance to engage. So I see that as something that we need to be a little more aggressive in promoting and opening up for people to communicate with the village and elected officials.
Dave?
I think that every meeting we
And
have.
I'll say that one of the questions that came in asked specifically to allow you to say a little bit more about citizen engagement as well, so.
Okay. I think that every meeting we have, other than the executive session portions of meetings, is open to the public. I think that we had this neighborhood revitalization process going on that was involved with people from various levels, people that were really good at doing that too. And we had maybe 30 to 40 people at these meetings at the depot, and we could have more. Other than the cat thing right now, we wouldn't have any people other than Howard coming to visit the council meetings. We rarely have that. And then I spoke with someone about the other day about the parking on Hayes Avenue for the people that live on Grandview. And I said, well, you know, we've had meetings about this, and did you go to any? And she says, well, no, nothing I would say would get anything done. Well, that was precisely what the meetings were for. So it's not really the village's fault. It's not my fault. It's not your fault. If somebody chooses not to go to the meeting where these things are going to be discussed, we can't help you. I'll give you a great example. I mean, Bob right there was one of them, one of these hotheads from Christopher Circle. Now, Christopher Circle was adamantly opposed to having, most of the people adamantly opposed to having sidewalks. And I'm telling you that they came up meeting after meeting after meeting, and they were civil, and they were decent people, and they got no sidewalks, because that's what they wanted, and they made a great case for it. And at the end of that, I think that was the time that I said, so I just want you to recall that, yes, you can fight City Hall, all right? And you can. If you come and you respectfully deal with people, you could do the same thing with the commissioners, I'm sure. You could do the same thing, and it says it right in the Constitution that we have the right to redress the government.
This one will go to Dave. This is actually an audience question. They are asking about the cost of water in Ada being much higher relative to other communities, and they're asking what you would do to address this.
Well, the water bill, as everybody calls it, isn't just the water bill. The water bill also includes the trash pickup. I don't remember all the things that it includes, but what? The storm sewer. Yes, yeah. And I mean, it pays for a lot of other things. If you would look at your water bill and notice what the water bill part of it is, I think you would be less upset about it. But one of the things that I really think is important, we've got a really great sewer plant, a sanitary sewer plant. We've got a great water plant, which we are going to upgrade. We've got grant monies to do some upgrades there. And if you don't have good plants, you don't have good anything. And here's what I think about. When the United States went into Baghdad and basically cleared it out, the very first thing that they did was send their water people in there to make sure that they could get clean water. And the second thing they did was send their sewer people in to make sure that they could get rid of people's waste. And those two things were obviously the two most important things for maintaining a civilization. So for me, if you want to have lousy water or lousy sewers, then don't upgrade your plants. And that's part of what those bills are for. Part of the water bill is to upgrade, to keep the plant upgraded. So I don't have many, I'm not very apologetic about that because I think it's really important for us to maintain the facilities that we have.
Thank you. Howard?
I'm glad Dave got that question first. You know, and I hear that from people as well, that the water bills in Ada are higher than what they are in other communities. And I think Dave's point to some extent is a good one. You know, they may be comparing apples to oranges because of what's rolled into the bill. I mean, I have to say, last night had the opportunity to observe the council meeting, and there was a discussion about increasing the refuse charge by 20 cents. And I thought that the process considering that option, Jamie's engagement, Patty's engagement, the council members, I thought was thoughtful, and in the context of, okay, here's why we need to do this. We're getting behind building up the sort of the rainy day fund was, I thought, a pretty good example of small town governance, and I was impressed by that. And I noticed that in the Kenton Times, the lead story was the 20-cent increase. But you know, that was one of the things that they did. But I thought that was impressive. I think the village council and certainly the administrative officers are conscious of the cost and are, you know, work hard to make sure that it's justified under all the circumstances.
Thank you. This is another question from the audience. Both candidates have resided in the village long enough to have witnessed the change in housing. Are the abundance of rentals a concern? Why or why not? And we'll start with Howard on this one.
Well, I guess it's a good question. You know, Dave talked about the Hayes edition, but it was 30 years ago. When you look around, maybe up on Autumn, there was some relatively new housing, what Guyton's building down in Grass Run. But, you know, I would say the absence of adequate housing for families is a problem. The rental issue is a different issue. I think the concern that I have since I've been here, that hasn't really been addressed, is substandard student housing. Nice old houses that have been carved up into apartments. Our house, when we bought it, had been a student rental. And we're still working on it 20 years later, trying to make it a nice, you know, a nice family house. I think that's a problem. I think the rentals for, you know, good rentals for families that, you know, where they'd be happy to live. I think the shortage there is a problem. And I don't know, substandard housing is a function of, you know, maybe our current zoning rules, maybe zoning enforcement. I think there are issues there that are really important to be addressed, because I know the university's not happy with students living in substandard housing. And probably parents aren't either if they knew about it. But I think that that is an issue that has to be addressed. I think that would be, you know, one of my priorities if I were to be elected.
Dave?
I agree with a lot of what Howard says. I don't know how much the village itself can do to correct that, but I do know this bit of history. And I may have my dates wrong or my decades wrong, but from what I understand, back in the 60s, the university begged people to turn their garage into an apartment for students, or begged them to get, you know, use their second or third bedroom for student housing, or a house that they had as a rental to prepare it for student housing. And that brought a lot of students into town. And then here not long ago, the university drug them all back in. You know, they made the students come back on campus to live, which left apartments that were, I mean, they weren't terrible, but they were not what some of us would like to live in. But they left them open and vacant. And so we had folks coming in from all over that were not, they weren't the kind of people you want to attract, druggies and the like. And so that caused a problem with the renters, and they had, we even had a meth explosion in town back in that time. So I think there needs to be some conversation with the university to say that we need this number of people from the university to be able to live in campus, or to be able to live in village housing, in privately owned stuff. And I think it's a really difficult question to deal with, and that's probably a pretty lousy answer, but that's what I've got.
Well, you'll get a chance to redeem yourself. I'll start with you on this question. What is your long-term vision for Ada? What would you like to see in 5, 10, 20 years from now?
Well, when I first got elected, I said my long-term vision was to fill up the industrial park. And that job's not done yet. But we've had, every acre in the industrial park has been in the interest of somebody. I mean, somebody has taken an interest in moving in there. And we lost, there was a bus company that wanted to come here. There was a number of different places. But now that you look, we do have this huge, fantastic Wilson plant coming in. And we do have 3 extensions to Ada Technologies, I think. We have a couple extensions to Ada Plastics. So we've been doing some things. I think the industrial park is a key part of that. And I've been told that if you want to attract people to your town, you have to have several things. You have to have jobs. You have to have, if you have a nice park, that helps. And people need to understand it. The village has nothing to do with maintaining or dealing with the park. I mean, that's the park board that does that, and that's a separate entity. You have to have a good school, and now look at what we've got. We've got a fine school over here, and we have most of those things. You have to have some churches, you have to have some places to eat, and so forth. We've got most of those things in town right now, and we've got others coming. We've got a brewery coming to town. We've got, I know people think it's not gonna make it, but it is. And we've got, right there where the Regal Beagle was, they're gonna have a bar and restaurant, much like Tavern 101 is my guess. But also they've got 4 apartments up, and I went into the one that's gonna be a B&B. It's just fantastic. It's beautiful and well done. So, I mean, we do have development in town, and I think that we need to ensure that it helps. Another thing that we know that helps is trees and flowers. They say if you have a pleasant walk down the street, people will stay.
Howard, long-term vision.
I like Dave's list of things that, that businesses want to move in, but I think one of the items on the list that he didn't mention was a place to live, a place for employees to live, a place for managers to live. And I think that without that, long-term, there's going to be a natural sort of break on economic development because we don't have sort of the housing in the community to show them and to talk about. I think long-term vision, when I think about the village, the question is how much growth and what kind of growth? I know that the Pegasus plant didn't move into the industrial park because they wanted to go bigger than the industrial park could accommodate. So, I mean, do we want a company to come in, a business to come in with 200 employees? I mean, what are the resources the village has to accommodate that? I think the vision for the future has to involve some fairly sophisticated planning, involving the governance, the community, et cetera, to say, okay, what do we want Ada to be? How big do we want Ada to be? What kind of growth in the industrial park? Can we accommodate growth at the university if the university increases its student population? These are issues that I think need to be addressed and need to be looked at in terms of, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Where does the village want to be 10 years from now in terms of its economic base, its housing base, its individuals? So I would be a strong advocate of a vigorous, inclusive, open planning process to begin thinking about what Ada could be or should be 10 years from now.
Thank you. So I've got two questions that are very similar from the audience, and this will probably be the last question before Lil's closing statements. We're coming up at the end of the hour. The two questions, and this will start with Howard. Does the village have codes or ordinances to demand clean or maintain yards? How can you hold the village, or how you or the village can hold landlords accountable? And a similar question is that there's concern about the upkeep of rentals. Some students are worried about their safety. What are your thoughts on ensuring safe housing for college students?
Well, I think, obviously, the questions are closely related. Yes, of course, the village has codes and an enforcement process. The question is, are those codes adequate? When was the last time that we systematically looked at those codes? What's changed? I think that's important. Are we doing an effective job in code enforcement? I mean, that's sort of an opaque process at this stage in terms of what the zoning officer is doing. But that is important. Substandard housing, do we need new rules to address that? Landlords can be fined for violations. We have this sort of unusual process where the police department's responsible for policing grass that's too high, as opposed to a zoning ordinance. We may need to look about how we go about enforcing our codes and looking at are codes adequate? Are these the kind of codes that other college towns have? Do we need to strengthen them? Do we need to target them? Do we need to be more aggressive in addressing out-of-town landlords, communicating with them in a way that is effective? I mean, I think these are all issues that have to be addressed, and I think that's an important part of the housing issue that I've been sort of harping on.
Thank you. Dave?
Well, we have a property maintenance code, and we have someone that does that. He's in the room right now that takes care of those things. And the police notice that kind of stuff too, but that's not their main focus. I mean, they might drive by and see something and not really notice, because they're looking for a different kind of thing normally. But if they do notice it, they come in, report it, and then they take care of it. With regard to the high grass and unkempt grass and such, we do have an ordinance about that, and we will come and cut your grass for you if you would like, and it costs $200 per hour per employee that comes and does it. And we've done that a number of times, and if you choose to not pay it, then we will put that on your property taxes, and then you'll have to pay it. And when we did that, we did have one of the members of this community, who many of you would probably know, so I won't mention his name, who called in and said, or he wrote an ad in the Ada Herald back in the day when we did that, and he said that he would cut your grass for $195 an hour. But, so we do have those, and the problem is that by law, we have to give them notice and then wait and give them a chance to get it done. And if you look, for example, at I don't know, what's that fraternity house that flooded? The Sig Eps. You look at that building and that whole property, and it was a disaster. But we had to notify them that we were going to do some things there if they didn't, and then they'd get charged for it. But it takes sometimes as much as 6 weeks for that to get through the paces that it needs to go. The government is not a quick thing, and we're going by the rules of government, some set up by the state government, some set up by other documents. So it's a difficult problem, I agree. And student housing has always been a problem, but we need to fix that.
Thank you very much. So we are at the end of our hour, and we are going to ask each of the candidates to give a 2-minute closing statement. I think we'll begin with Dave and with Howard.
Well, this may sound a little Pollyanna-ish, but I love this town, and I love the people in this town. When I was 20 years at Northern, they give a banquet back in the day, and I had to stand up and say something, and I got to say this. I said, and I know a lot of people in this town, and I don't think I've met 5 jerks in the whole place. And then for the next month, people come up and said, am I one of them? But, I mean, this is a fantastic town, as Howard has been pointing out, sitting on their front porch and watching the neighbors go by and watching the squirrels go up in the trees or whatever. It's a fantastic place to be. It's a fantastic place to be from. And I'm happy that I moved here. I came here in 1979, and I'm glad that I did, and I intend to stay here, and I intend to be buried right out here. So that's how much I love it.
Howard?
I want to thank ICAP and the Lions Club for this opportunity. This has been fun. I enjoy this. I enjoy talking about my ideas. I enjoy being up here with Dave. When I was running our International Masters of Law program, and we had students coming in from all over the world, at graduation, one of the highlights was a cookout at the mayor's house. And, you know, where the countries these students came from, you know, the mayor was a pretty big deal. I tried to explain to them that that wasn't the case in Ada. But Deb would try to make international food for them, and it just worked well. I like living in Ada. There's a lot of things that make it a great town, including our front porch and the squirrels. But there are things that we can do, I think, better, and that's why I'm running. I think Dave's done a good job for 20 years, but I think some new vision, sort of a new lens on things would be useful and helpful for the university and the village. I think I can provide that new view. I think I can provide that. I think I can provide that lens, and I hope I get the opportunity to. And if I don't, I'll be happy to spend the next 4 years in Ada with the current mayor. But I'd like to spend the next 4 years as the mayor. So thank you for coming, for your attention, for the questions. Rob, thank you. You know, I look forward to continuing the campaign until November 7th.
Awesome. Let's give them a round of applause. As I said at the outset, it's not easy to put your hat in the arena and put yourself out there for other people, particularly in a small town, right? You know, I do a lot of things, the national, international. I'm more nervous doing this than anything that I actually do. It's a real joy. I want to echo what both the candidates said. I love Ada. I love our village. It's wonderful to see so many people out there and show up tonight to take part in this. I also want to thank again the Lions Club for partnering with us on this wonderful event, and Buckeye East for providing those wonderful treats. I also want to thank our wonderful IT department. So if you want to watch this over and over and over again, it will be on the YouTube channel, and we'll share that with our local media as well. I want to thank our ICAP fellows, and once again, thank our candidates, and remind you to get out there and make sure that you are part of the solution and not just crying about problems. So get out there and vote November 7th. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I don't think we should do this more often.
I don't want to do it again. That's enough.
Thank you.
We're all going pretty well beat up anyway.
I was going to say, yeah, let me grab my cane.
You guys take care.
All right, you too.
Thanks again.